If you're growing in a greenhouse, listen up. In this video, we're going to talk about 3 simple ways to increase your overall success and plant health when growing in a greenhouse. Let's go. So our greenhouse is 1,000 square feet. If your greenhouse is not 1,000 square feet, if you simply have a couple kits you've put together from maybe it might be Costco or Amazon or any of the online greenhouse kit dealers, you might not have 1,000 square foot greenhouse. That's fine. All greenhouses act exactly the same way. So the tips and tricks I'm going to outline in this video to increasing plant health and maximizing the success of your greenhouse is going to apply no matter the size of greenhouse. Heck, you could have a small little 5 foot by 4 foot little tall greenhouse that is taller than it is wide, and that is fine too. Every single greenhouse basically is a tool for you to grow plants earlier, get an earlier start, and essentially utilize the sun's power to grow plants so you don't have to grow them indoors. Now, depending on the size, will depend on kind of how warm they stay, how much heat is retained, how many plants you can grow, things like that. But the mechanics behind the greenhouse, regardless if it's a 20 square foot greenhouse or a 20,000 square foot greenhouse, is exactly the same. So with that, let's jump into the first thing that you're really going to need to nail down to increase the success of your greenhouse, and that's humidity. When it comes to controlling humidity, it is very important. Now, humidity is the amount of moisture in the air. Having some humidity is good because it helps seeds germinate. It helps your plants they dehydrate less. The leaves can grow to their most full potential, and that really helps to increase plant growth. But humidity is only good to a certain extent. We talk about a lot how you want to take, if you're growing with a humidity dome on your seed starting trays, you only want to use that humidity dome as long as your plants are sprouting. Once they've sprouted, you need to take it off. And the same exact thing applies to a greenhouse, believe it or not. This greenhouse is like a giant humidity dome. It traps moisture and will condense on walls. It'll be in the air. If your air is super muggy, it can actually lead to mold and mildew issues. So you really need to control the humidity. How do we do that in our greenhouse? Well, that's by ventilating. Now, if you have a smaller greenhouse, simply vent the front, vent the sides. Venting will cool it down, but it'll let that excess humidity leave the greenhouse and help things dry out. And we'll talk about airflow in a little bit, but airflow is the other kind of component we need to talk about. But airflow / ventilation is so important. So our sides roll up. Follow me here. Okay, so coming through here, we've got a vent here. Now this vent, this controls our louvers. So you'll notice, come follow me, we got some louvers here. Now this is our form of ventilation. We have our vents. Now those will open and close based on temperature, because typically the warmer it is, the more humidity you're going to have to a certain extent. But that helps to vent. That ventilation is so important. After that, we also have another vent over here, and these are our sidewalls. So if we roll this up, you'll notice that the sides start rolling up. That leads me to the second thing that we need to talk about, which is airflow. Airflow is so important. That's why we have these fans here. Now these fans, we have 3 of them. What they're doing is they're essentially moving air through the greenhouse. Airflow is so important because without airflow, that's kind of the second component for humidity. This is all under one point, right? To increase success, you really should have some airflow. Again, by venting your greenhouse, if it's a smaller greenhouse, just lifted the sides up, leaving the door open, anything like that is going to get ventilation or airflow. If you have a larger greenhouse, adding fans is so important because it's going to help to move that humidity, move that airflow and air circulation, which helps to dry off the leaves when they get wet. It also helps to reduce any surface mold or mildew, which can be caused from stagnant air. So important. And that's kind of the second component to the humidity problem. And that just helps to, again, just dry things out. So very important. You will absolutely have a really hard time growing incredible seedlings in a greenhouse that is too humid and not well ventilated, not enough airflow. So that's the first tip to success using greenhouses. The second tip for success with a greenhouse is heat. Now you might be heating your greenhouse with a variety of different methods. We're going to talk about a couple of them. Our method of choice is a propane rocket heater. This is a forced air heater, and if you can't tell, it's super, super loud. But without it, our greenhouse at night would plummet in temperature, and during the day, it would skyrocket. And that is what you want to reduce. This right here, the low temperatures, the high temperatures, will stress your seedlings out and result in really infrequent germination, very spotty growth, and it absolutely is something that you want to try to level off if at all possible. I'm going to move away from this because it's so loud. Now, some plants like tomatoes need warmer temperatures, peppers need warmer temperatures. However, certain plants like our brassica here, they're a little more comfortable with 55 to 65 degrees, and that's fine. But regardless of what you're growing, you absolutely should have some type of heat source besides the sun, because at night, when the sun goes down, you're going to find that, especially in early season, late winter, early spring, you might have dead seedlings by the time you wake up in the morning, because what a lot of gardeners really struggle with is fighting the nighttime lows. It's not the daytime highs that's the problem. It can be, but again, proper ventilation will let that excess heat out, no problem. But what you are doing is you're essentially needing to heat the greenhouse during the nighttime, because that is typically where you find the most danger with your seedlings. Frost, freezing will kill a large majority of your seedlings that you're trying to start early. So having some type of heat source is important. Now, regardless of what type of heater you're choosing, you could choose a forced air heater like that. It's good. We have a whole video on the heater we're using, kind of our process. It's very jerry-rigged, promise. But we also have a carbon monoxide detector because it is not being ventilated with fresh air from outside. However, we found that there's a lot of open air gaps, and because this is not a very hermetically sealed greenhouse, there's so much air exchange that the carbon monoxide detector is there as a safety precaution, but it's not something that we're very concerned about. We're in here all the time. So we use that as our heat source, but some people will use a wood-burning stove. Other people might find themselves just using a space heater. If your greenhouse is smaller than 100 square feet, you definitely could get by just using a space heater or one or two of them. You just want to really make sure to be careful of a risk of electrocution. You want to make sure, because space heaters are not necessarily waterproof. Anytime you're messing with electrical, you want to make sure that they are nice and dry. That's why our space heaters, or our rocket heaters, are underneath an umbrella, simply because the electrical components, they're not meant to get wet. And because we get a lot of drips and we're messing with water, we like to just err on the side of caution. But again, you just want to make sure you're very careful using space heaters in a greenhouse, because those are all electrical components. But regardless of what you use, you really want to have a heat source. Now, the final thing I was going to mention with a heat source is you can also use some passive heating. Passive heating is a wonderful way to heat your greenhouse. Black pots, like these pots here, the soil inside, the ground that you have your greenhouse on, if it's brick, can be awesome. It can be an absolutely amazing heat sink that can help to absorb the heat throughout the day and release it slowly throughout the night. The side of your house, if your house is brick, or it's a south facing or a west facing side of your house, can release that heat throughout the evening and can really help to give that ambient temperature to help keep your house warm. I've also heard of people using large buckets of water. Big 55-gallon drums of water painted black can help to absorb that heat throughout the day, release it throughout the night. And those are just some different ways for you to kind of add the overall warm component, because you need heat. You absolutely have to have heat to balance the highs and the lows. You want a very flat, consistent temperature, if at all possible. Now, I was going to finally mention here, it is 70 degrees in this greenhouse. Okay, it's 70 degrees. That is a great temperature for most plants. We'd like it warmer, obviously, but it's cloudy today, and so we're not getting much heat generated from the sun. But when the sun comes out, we also have to make sure that we balance with not having too much heat. That is where having that ventilation is so important. The side vents, the end louvers there, that lets out excess heat if it gets too hot, as well as lets out that extra humidity like we talked about earlier. So make sure that you are keeping a thermometer. This is literally a $4 or $5 thermometer. You pick it up at any dollar store. This is priceless to know what the temperature is in your greenhouse, because that way you know if you need to vent or not. It helps you just track your data so you know kind of what you're growing in, what your conditions are. So definitely invest in a thermometer. And that is the second thing, probably one of the most important things. And then the third thing that we're going to talk about is combating fungal issues, which that happens in almost every greenhouse. Last but not least, one of the largest things you're probably going to come in contact with when using a greenhouse is fungal issues. Even in a large greenhouse like this, with all the ventilation in the world and all the heating elements, you have a lot of water being trapped by plastic. And inevitably, you're going to have, in especially late winter, early spring, when you can't always ventilate as often as you'd like. Sometimes the temperature, if it's too cold out, we can't vent the greenhouse. That is a reality for basically anyone in the industry. So what we do in that case is we have to use some type of fungicide. It is so important to do. It is not going to harm your plants. What will harm your plants is ignoring it. We have some basil here that is starting to show some signs. We have a couple plants here that are starting to show signs of gray mold or botrytis. Gray mold and botrytis are the same thing, and they can be very easily controlled with a copper fungicide spray. You don't need to get anything too crazy. This is organic. It's very simple to apply, but you can get botrytis or gray mold on your tomatoes, very susceptible. You can get on your peppers. A lot of your more dry weather loving crops can get gray mold. Oregano is susceptible. Petunias, flowers, ornamentals, so many crops are susceptible to gray mold. So it is highly recommended to spray as a preventative. We will spray about every 2 to 3 weeks. We spray, it's 2 teaspoons per gallon of water, copper fungicide. Shake it up, and we simply spray the leaves until they are dripping. This is going to make the surface of the leaf inhospitable for the gray mold to colonize, and will control it even in a high humidity environment. Gray mold loves cool temperatures and high humidity environments, basically being an early season greenhouse. There's no other way around it. A lot of commercial greenhouses will use some pretty nasty chemicals. The greenhouse I worked at used some very crazy chemicals. But in a greenhouse that is your own, you can choose. That's the great thing, is that you can act preventatively, starting as early as a seedling that's 3 to 5 weeks old, all the way up to a fully mature plant at a ratio of 2 teaspoons per gallon. You can go up to 3 teaspoons per gallon if it is not proving effective, or you can increase the frequency. We're spraying every 2 weeks, but you could spray every 7 to 10 days if you really needed to help to control the gray mold issue that you will definitely encounter at some point in your career of a home gardener with a greenhouse. And that's the big thing. A lot of gardeners think that greenhouses are just the best thing in the world. A lot of gardeners, they think, oh, if I could just get a greenhouse. I thought that too. I thought if I could just get a greenhouse, it'd be easy. I should grow a ton of plants, have a ton of fun. Do not be fooled. It is hands down one of the best gardening tools that you can have to grow plants earlier, grow plants larger, have an abundance of plants that you can move out into your garden. Plus, heck, for us, this pays our bills. This is a retail greenhouse that we are selling tens of thousands of seedlings per season out of, and it helps to keep the lights on. Plus, we pull from here and throw them in our garden with the extras. So it's great. It is an amazing, amazing tool, but do not be fooled. There's a lot of work with greenhouses, and a lot can go wrong. They're not turnkey. They're not simple. You gotta have the ventilation. You gotta control the humidity. You've gotta have the temperature control, and you absolutely have to be able to tolerate some level of mold or mildew in early season, and that can be controlled simply with copper fungicide. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, this is Luke from the My Gardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting migardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care.